Hey, how's it going? This is Ari from Train Zen. Today I have a special AMA edition, which is an Ask Me Anything, of course. What I decided to do is actually collect questions from you guys. And the person who asks me a question that I feel I can answer truthfully and honestly, I will answer. And hopefully that will be beneficial for you guys as well. So today I have a question from Yoel, who asked me, how can I use a Clubbell, a mace, or a hammer without injuring myself? Because he noticed that a lot of people in his environment are injuring themselves using these kind of tools. First of all, for those of you who don't know what is a mace, hammer, or Clubbell training, it's a form of training that I find to be amazing. It is mostly focused on non-linear movements. You know, linear movements is something like back and forth, up and down. Mace, hammer, and Clubbells is a bit more dynamic, a bit more flowy, and it takes us out of this linear form of motion. And we are also working with different objects that are not necessarily as comfortable as dumbbells, barbells, or kettlebells. If you want to check out some really nice hammer videos, I would recommend checking out a guy called Coach Vaughn. He is a really good mace trainer and has amazing exercises, and definitely check him out. All right, first thing to understand when talking about clubbells, maces, and hammers is that it is not an entry-level sport. What do I mean by not an entry-level sport? You can't just start training with those things without being trained at anything. Theoretically you can, but you have to be very, very, very selective of your exercises. Now, the character of a clubbell, mace, or a hammer workout is a character that is dynamic and that might cause a lot of pressure and load on your ligaments and your tendons. So when you swing a mace behind your back, or when you swing a hammer up, or when you do all of these kind of dynamic movements, if you don't have the basic tone in your muscle, if you don't have the basic mass in your muscle, you're going to put all that load onto your ligaments and on your tendons. Your joint is not going to be solidified enough in place, and it will eventually lead itself to injury. That's why many people get injured when they start doing CrossFit at the beginning if they do it irresponsibly, because CrossFit also involves a lot of explosive movements like the clean jerk and snatches and movements that are ballistic in their nature. And ballistic movements, if performed incorrectly, will go specifically on your ligaments and your tendons without the support of your muscles. So what you want to do before approaching any kind of workout like this, like a mace or a hammer, is you definitely want to spend a couple of months before just building on basic muscle mass, especially if you are not trained before. If you come fresh, if you haven't done any kind of sport before, don't start with a clubbell, don't start with a hammer, and don't start with a mace. Now, a side note, you could start, but you need to be supervised and you need to have a very, very, very selective exercise selection. You have to choose the exercises that are not ballistic, the ones that work more on mobility or the ones that work more on core strength before you start actually training with a hammer or a mace. That actually leads me to a second point, and that's core strength. A lot of times when people swinging a mace, you see that their core is jittery. When you swing a mace, your core needs to be strong, because if the weight in your core is not solidified, you're gonna stretch your pelvis down, stretch your pelvis to the sides, and that might also lead to certain injuries in your lower back and to certain pain. So you want to make sure that your core is strong. I specifically recommend strengthening your TVA, which is a group of muscles inside of the belly. Actually, it is the group of muscles that are holding your internal organs together. It's actually called the transvastus abdominis. I recommend strengthening these kind of strengthening exercise for this group. You can also look it up, the TVA. And once this thing is strong, you can go into more challenging core exercises like planks or medicine ball exercises, etc., and get your core strength ready. A third thing that I would advise you to do is to work on your shoulder mobility before you go into club or hammer training. Club and hammer training are amazing for shoulder mobility by themselves, but before, you want to make sure you have a certain level of mobility in your shoulder so you don't, again, create extra tension on your ligaments and your joints. So just to sum it up real quick, what you want to do if you want to start with a Clubbell, a hammer, or a Mace training, what you want to do before is work on your muscle mass and your muscle tone, meaning you want to do at least a couple of months of mass training, building up that muscle mass, bulking up and increasing your tone of the muscle, the tension of the muscle, especially around the shoulders and especially around the core. Second thing, increase your core strength. And third thing, work on your shoulder mobility. Anyway, man, I hope that helped you, and try not to get yourself injured, and I'll see all of you pretty soon.